Hey everybody, I'm here today with a video tutorial on creating a circle card. I'm going to be featuring two Paper Divas stamps. Here's a look at the card that we're going to make today, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm starting with my smallest circle here, and I've got a piece of Canson watercolor paper, and my smallest circle is about 3.5 inches wide. I'm going to go ahead and send that through my Big Kick. I'm also going to send my larger circle through with white cardstock 2 times. This larger circle is about 4 3/8, I guess I would say. It's right between 4 1/4 and 4 3/8. Now I'm going to place my larger circle with my smaller circle inside. I'm just going to nest it inside, and I'll tape that down to hold it in place. I've got this on craft cardstock, and I'll run that through my die cutting machine too. What this does is it creates a nice frame, so I don't have to stack a lot of pieces on top of each other. They can inlay very nicely, as you can see, and be a nice flat card to go through the mail. So I've got my small watercolor papered circle here, and then I've got this On the Road Again accessory set from two Paper Divas, and I'm going to be using a few of the images out of here to create a scene. I love to mask off scenes, and this stamp set just really lends itself to masking off a ton of different scenes you can create with this. So I started off with this small little squirrel, and I've stamped him in Versamark ink and applied Ranger clear fine detail clear embossing powder over that and heat set it. I've already created a bunch of masks. I've stamped those onto Inkadoo masking paper and trimmed those out beforehand. Just to save a little bit of time, this video is already pretty lengthy. But I'm going to go ahead and I masked off the squirrel, and then I stamped on this cactus stamp set. I'm going to go ahead and mask that cactus off, and I'm using my embossing bag each time before I stamp because I'm embossing all of these images. But I stamped another cactus to the left-hand side there and just cut off a little bit so it looks like it's behind the other one. Now I'm going to go ahead and take the cactus stamp again and stamp one on the right-hand side. And then I'll go ahead and heat emboss it just like I've done with all the others. Once that was done, I went ahead and masked off everything, my squirrel and my 3 cactuses, and I'm going to bring in this, it's actually, I believe, supposed to be snow for the top of the camper and the other set, but I wanted to use this to create a horizon line. So I just inked up the top part of it. You could use the bottom portion also, one or the other, and I've just used a bit of it to stamp that on. And then I, again, heat set that. And then I'm going to use it again and line it up. You can see through these very clearly. And line it up there and create the second half of my horizon line. And that's just a way to really just stretch your stamps and use them for what they weren't intended to be used for. So you need to think outside the box when you look at your stamp sets. And don't just think, oh, that's a snow cap for the top of the camper, that's all I can use it for. Well, I've used it for a horizon line here. Now I've taken this little, are those electrical posts? I don't know what they are. We have them all over in the country where I live, but I've stamped a few of those on the horizon line and heat set those. And now, because it's me and I smudge everything, I'm just taking my craft knife and my sanding block, and I'll remove all the smudges and then use my white eraser to go ahead and smooth my paper back out. This just saves me from having to toss out a lot of pieces. But now I'm going to go ahead and do some simple watercoloring with some distress inks and markers. If you want to know the exact colors, you can look over on my blog, or you can look in the picture. I've got them all up at the top, but I will go ahead and let some music play while I watercolor this scene. So now that my main panel was done, I needed to go ahead and create my sentiment for this card. I'm using this Banner's 3 stamp set. It's also from 2 Paper Divas, and in it, it's got this hello there sentiment. Very simple, but it lends itself to, if you just need a quick card to send out. So I'm going to go ahead and ink this up in VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and before I stamp it down, I'm going to remember, thank goodness, to use my embossing bag before I stamp. So I went ahead and used that and put down a layer of my powder, and then I'll just ink that up again and stamp it down on the bottom portion of this white cardstock. I'm going to be heat embossing this, and again, I'm going to be using Ranger Superfine Detail Clear Embossing Powder. I'll just pour some of this on and get the excess off just by lightly tapping it and maybe give it a few flicks on the back. I'm using my heat gun to go ahead and heat set this until it's nice and shiny. And the reason I use the clear on this is because there are such fine details in those letters. You really want to use a detail embossing powder on these. So I went ahead and trimmed off the sentiment there just so it's evenly spaced on that. And then I'll clip off the ends and then make it into a fishtail banner on both sides of this. Very simple to do with your scissors. Just cut up the middle and then from each point, cut into the line you cut. If that makes sense, you could see I did it there. Now, to create my card base, I needed to take my 2 large white circles that I created in the first step. These are my largest circles, both from white cardstock, and I have just stuck one of those in my paper trimmer, and I have put a score mark on the top of it. Now I'm going to flip that over, and I'm going to line my score mark up with one of my lines on my trimmer, and I need to trim off a bottom portion of this circle. That's just going to create a flat base for when I unfold my card and stand it up. It's going to sit nicely. If you don't do this, it's just going to roll all over the place. So I trimmed off a portion of that, and I needed to switch my trimmer blade at this point, so I just sanded off the little phrase you get with it. I'm using my bone folder just to make sure that's nice and creased so my card opens easily. And I'll just use some double-sided adhesive and put that on the top. Peel off the backing, and then with my other circle, I'm just going to line it up and then press down firmly just to make sure that those two stick together. And then once I open this, you'll see what I mean by you need that bottom portion of the back circle chopped off to get it to stand up nicely. If you didn't, it would just start rolling all over the place. So once I had that done, I went ahead and took my craft frame that I had made earlier, and I'm going to put some glossy accents along the back of it. You can use whatever adhesive is your favorite. Multimedia matte would be a good choice. You could even pop this up with some foam adhesive if you wanted to give your card a little bit of dimension. But I kept it pretty simple and just put on some glossy accents. And then again, I will take it and line it up along my card base and push that down. When I wanted this to stick down, I went ahead and I believe I used, it's just a pack of glitter that I have, and I'll be using it in a card coming up actually. But I needed something heavy just to hold this down while the glue dried. So for my cardstock panel, I went ahead and put on some double-sided adhesive, but I didn't feel like that was enough to hold this down because it is a pretty heavy panel. So I squirted on some glossy accents also, and then I will just fit that right inside the frame on the front of my card. Now I needed to make sure that this was lined up because you do have your bottom portion on the back that's chopped off. And when you want this to sit up, you don't want, your squirrel to be hanging out on the right-hand side there with your sky on the left. So I went ahead and I'll put my glitter back on top of that just to hold it down in place to give it some dry time. Now for my banner sentiment, I used some foam tape, and I'm going to go ahead and put that on the back of there and pop that up on the top of my card in the center. And that completed my card for the day. A simple one-layer card that I just made a little bit more interesting by making it into a circle. And you can see how nicely it stands up. I will leave you all with just a few pictures. For more information and the complete supply list, you can visit my blog, craftingwhilecaffeinated.wordpress.com. Thank you all so much for watching, and happy crafting!